Hi, everyone. I'm David Tannenbaum here with David Russell in Spain to introduce his upcoming concert in Churches of Spain. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So I have to say that I had a chance to preview this concert, and spoiler alert, it's very good. I just loved hearing it. And
Great.
we're used to hearing you play in our concert halls around here, St. Mark's and Herbst Theater. But in this case, you're kind of playing a home game. This is you in the churches where you live. And my first question is, I'm wondering if this is an idea that you've long had, or whether this was a pandemic inspiration.
It was really a pandemic inspiration because speaking with Richard Patterson, we were talking about doing that, and it was actually Maria's idea for concerts in some sort of historic setting. And so he said, well, go for it. And what really happened was that at that time, we were very much locked down in our area. It was when I recorded it a few weeks ago. And so I couldn't get into any halls here. But because I was going to play the Camino de Santiago, the Cantigas de Santiago by Steve Goss, I phoned up my friend Federico Shepherd, who lives in Carrión de los Condes. And he coordinated it so that we could play. Especially, I wanted to play in one big church that's called Santa Maria la Blanca, because I had played already Steve's piece in that church a couple of years ago. And it's a majestic place. And I thought that would be a wonderful place for the concert. So in the end, because of times, the priests didn't have time for us to be a long time in any one place. It was also really cold. It was freezing. And so, so I did the concert in 3 different churches, which I thought gave it more variety.
Oh, yeah. It gives it such a beautiful visual variety and a sonic variety, because each one sounds somewhat different, I would say. And
Right.
is this a small crew? Was it just you and Maria, or were there people also filming with you?
Well, basically it's my setup. And Federico put up the camera as well. So I used some of the other kind of exteriors and things, because we were really rushing. We didn't have time to really spend a long time on doing the filming. So basically, it's my setup, and Maria, of course, coordinates it. She keeps notes, and that's what we did.
Yeah, I think, music has become more and more visual. And so note to young players, you should have your own setup. I think you'll really benefit from having that if you do.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I did all the editing and everything, and I think all the young players should learn to do it. It's not that difficult, because if you get somebody else to do it, they're gonna be editing something next week, someone else's thing, but you're gonna live with it all your life. So it's best if you really get completely hands-on and learn how to do it. I think I love doing it. I love spending the time doing the editing, etc.
I do too, and it's mostly because of the control, because concentration is not always level, but you can edit to the best moments throughout. It's actually another art form in a way, editing it together, I would say. Yeah. So that leads me to a question that I've been thinking about.
Yes.
Go ahead. A question that I've been thinking about, this maybe a little off topic, but I've been using some of the time of the pandemic to complete some recordings that I've wanted to do for a while. And I'm doing in the format of the CD. And I love making CDs. I love the narrative. I love choosing the program, the whole process. But I also want to have my music in a place that listeners will receive it. So what are you thinking about in terms of that? Do you think the future is visual only? Do you think it's a hybrid? Do you have any prediction about where we're going?
I have no idea. So I will probably continue to make some CDs, but once it's recorded, well recorded digitally, whatever format comes, we can adapt to it. Except that is it purely audio. But nowadays, the audio has it's been kind of dumbed down, because there was a time, you'll remember, and all of us, when we wanted super audio, 96 kilohertz and all of that, and then people listened to it on MP3 on a little computer with silly little headphones.
Right.
So it's the kind of level of quality that we were aiming at, say, in the 90s, 20 years ago, sort of changed. But the visual quality has really gone up.
Yes.
You really have to film in 4K at least. And the advantage of doing it in 4K is that you can do a zoom in and you don't lose quality. Whereas if you do it in just HD, as soon as you zoom in past a certain level, the pixelation starts. So the 4K video is great because it's just got so much more information than YouTube needs. So you can do zoom ins, you can take parts of it, you can move around. With a static camera, you can make it look like it's moving, etc. So so I would say you have to do it in 4K, and that's what I did.
And having said all that, let's also say that there's nothing to replace real sound in a real room. And I'm sure you, like I, can't wait to get back to that. Right?
Of course. Well, the experience of a live concert is completely different from the experience of a recorded concert, or even a live stream on a screen. It's still not the same as actually being in a hall and seeing someone, being the whole interaction that can happen, that maybe some of the people who've grown up more with through the screen, perhaps they're more used to it, but I'm not. And I watch concerts on the screen, but there's nothing like seeing a concert live or playing a concert live.
Yes, it's watching someone cook right in front of you. It's not microwave cooking. It's a real meal being made right there. I always remember that Keith Jarrett said, death tends to hover around a lot at solo recitals. And what he's referring to is the danger of it. You're watching somebody taking a chance up there, and there's an edge to that that's irreplaceable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move on to the program a little bit. You start with this suite that you've recorded before by Jacques Saint-Luc, and it's a beautiful suite, and he remains a pretty obscure composer. I have to tell you, my favorite moment in the suite is in the final movement. It's a Passacaglia, also with the Caprice, which is unusual. The Passacaglia part at the end of a suite like that is usual, but it's rolling along and doing these wonderful variations. And then all of a sudden, it just stops cold on the parallel minor. And you do such a beautiful thing with that. You just make time kind of stop and you shade it darker. And then it just kind of loses itself and then kind of collects itself and finds its way toward the end. And I just love that movement. But so I'm curious how you found this suite, and was it things like that attracted you to it?
Well, honestly, when I found this a long time ago, and it was a time when I really wanted to learn more about ornamentation and things, and if you ornament the hell out of something that is very well known, you are in mortal danger of really people not being able to agree with what you're doing, because everybody has their own opinion on how you should play Bach or whatever, but nobody has an opinion on how to play Jacques Saint-Luc. And so you can do a lot more with it and enjoy it, and you can soon find out what things are successful and what is not successful. And in many of the Baroque composers wrote not like Bach. They wrote actually much simpler and left it open for more ornamentation, which is the case with this suite. So there's much more room for me to add little things in as if they're part of the piece, and yet still hopefully keep the Allemand, the Courante, keep it out with the structure that he's given us, right, but with the freedom that I would have, that I never would have in Scarlatti, for example.
Yeah, I mean, after all, they are ornaments and not the fundamental notes, but still, you can have a lot of fun with that. I got to the point in concert where I was improvising ornaments in Divisé. And though I threw in some very strange ones, I loved the process of trying, just telling myself I was going to create them on the spot. Along the lines of people judging it, to throw one more quote out there, I always remember Gustav Leonhardt saying, back then they knew a lot less about authenticity than we do now.
Absolutely.
It's
Sounds good.
absolutely true. Just they were musicians making music,
Yeah,
and I think
that's
there's
right.
a correlation between Baroque music and jazz in the sense that, you can't really write jazz down. You can write the chart down, but to
Yes.
make it jazz, you have to know the style and make it come alive. And that's why we want to be historically informed, but also be, making music just in the manner that they did, not literally exactly every little thing.
That's right. Absolutely. Agree.
And so I'm curious also about the title for a second, The Taking of Gita, which is a medieval town near Rome. Was
Yeah.
the medieval connection in your mind when you chose that?
To be honest, I didn't know that was the title at first. When I first found the suite, I found it in amongst like a load of stuff. It wasn't. And to be honest, I didn't even know that it was actually a complete suite. But I put it together, in the order that I found that, and it's only later that a lutenist pointed out to me to where to go and look for it and things, and pointed out that it was called La Triste Gaeta, the title. So now I put the title, but actually I think when I recorded this some years ago, I don't know if I even put down that title because I didn't know it had that title.
I see. Yeah.
So,
One thing for young players out there, a component of what we professional musicians do is research, like David was just talking about. About the teaching and the performing and the recording, but we are also out there searching and researching for music a lot. And that's an interesting part of what we do.
I would say that if you're going to play a piece, the more you know about it, the more confidence you have in what you're doing. So instead of just taking the score, find out about who wrote it, when the composer wrote it, what reason they wrote it for. But all of that helps, I think, to. I won't say it necessarily makes you play it better, but it makes you feel like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So at least you can play it with more confidence.
Yeah, you might get a little more on the inside of the composer's perspective. And I would say, if you can, listen to other works by that composer far outside of guitar writing. For a lot of guitar composers who don't play guitar, the guitar is kind of a reach for them. So you can find them in their comfort zone, maybe if they're writing for orchestra or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's move to the Steve Goss piece. We know about the piece. We've heard it out here. It's a wonderful piece, and it's lovely to hear it kind of in its original setting, you could say. Did Steve make a trip down there? Was his research by going, or did he just research in other ways?
No, he researched it at home, but I played the piece for in that church, and those churches actually, they have concerts all summer, guitar concerts for the pilgrims. So there's hundreds of pilgrims going through every day, and the guitarist can have a completely new audience every night because the next lot arrive. And Federico Shepherd is the person who he organized all of that. And so when they had their concert number 500, he asked me if I would play. So I played the piece, and Steve came down to Sirga and for the concert, So then he really got the feeling of being in the place.
I see. And did he modify the piece after hearing it in the place, or was it pretty much done?
No, it was pretty much done. The piece kind of grew as he was writing it. He was sending bits to me, and I sent him videos back. But he'd already written for me before another piece, which went through actually much more modification than this one. This one, it was what he gave me. It was already great, and the only discussion was, is it going to be 7 movements or 5 movements? And things. And I'm really glad that he went the whole hog and 7 movements, and that are, I think, completely magical. He's done a great work.
Yeah, and it's so lovely to hear medieval music on the guitar. I mean, the only other major piece I can think of is the piece called Troubadours by John Corigliano, which is a concerto. which is in medieval music style, but there's just not much else. And I mean, let's face it, pretty much everything sounds good on the guitar, and that style especially, I would say. Maybe not
That's right.
Wagner and Liszt, that might be a stretch, but everything else sounds great on guitar. Yeah.
You know, they also wrote some nice tunes, you know.
Oh, maybe a few. I just watched the Ring Cycle. It's for the, I've seen it.
Oh, wow.
It's so great. So listen, if you decide you don't want to travel anymore, you just need to sit in one of those churches and have the audience come to you every day. That's it.
Yeah, really.
So let's talk about the concluding section of the program. These two beautiful Bach chorales, which are certainly written after, the churches, but on the other hand, Bach was the most religious of composers. So,
Yes.
it really sounds beautiful in there, and it sounds just right somehow. Yeah.
That's why I chose to do them, because, I knew that they were going to sound magical in the church. I mean, they sound magical anywhere, but with that kind of acoustics that really extends the note, it's inspiring to play in those situations. So, and I had them in my repertoire, so it was easy. I thought they're going to go in, definitely.
Yeah. It's a perfect choice because the long lines just work for the chorale so beautifully. And then ending with the Rigondi, I feel like he's one of, if not the strongest of the 19th century composers. He went a little further harmonically than the other ones did. And this is not his most well-known piece, but it's just a beautiful piece. So have you played it for a long time?
On and off, but I put it in my repertoire this year. I played it maybe, I'm going to say 15 years ago or something. And I thought I'd like to play it again. It's like a set of variations, but I think he's as you say, very imaginative in his writing, and he must have had a wonderful technique, because he certainly extends the technical demands way past Giuliani or something. Although I mean, Giuliani, I'm sure, was a whiz guy, must have played wonderfully, and Saur, etc. But what he actually asked out of the guitar was very guitaristic, whereas many times Rigondi, he wants those harmonies, so he often goes into areas that really are not very guitaristic to achieve what he's aiming at. So he must have had an amazing ability, really, to be able to do that.
I agree.
So it's fun to kind of, I won't say fight, but to challenge yourself with a piece that that needs a certain kind of virtuosity.
I agree, and I think that it's particularly a challenge on the modern guitar. I mean, I find especially his etudes, when done on a 19th century guitar with that different string scale, they're a lot easier. So playing it on a modern guitar is really a lot, especially for the left hand.
I agree, and also even, the amount, like the glissandos and things that he includes, sometimes it's just not going to work on our modern guitar. And some of his slurring, etc., works really well on a guitar that's lighter in the hand, But we can do it, and I think it's really worth it. As you said, the studies certainly show really quite clearly what he could do, because there he was certainly exploring possibilities in his big works, like the Reverie and the two airs and things. I think he's like, okay, forget studying, just go for it,
Yeah, and actually, they're harder to play on the modern guitar, but they're big in conception. So if we can do them on the modern guitar, they just sound extra good with all that sound. I would say. So David, it's such a delight to talk to you and to hear this wonderful program. We miss you and your playing around here, and you're one of the reasons I want this pandemic to end as quickly as possible, so we can get to hear you live again.
Great. Well, so, I want to come and visit you as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
You've been here every year for many, many years, and I hope next year is the next time. So thank you for your time, David.
Thank you. Bye.